Hello everyone! In this lesson we're going to finish setting up our Laravel installation within our Ubuntu Docker container. Let's jump into the action. So from Docker Desktop, you can see that I've stopped that container. So from the container screen, you can click the Start button to start it, or assuming it's running, obviously you can click the Stop button to stop it. But what I want to show you right now is that let me go ahead and stop it and then start it up again. So right now it's currently stopped, and if I tried to visit localhost in my browser, it doesn't work, right? However, even if I start the container, I'm still not able to visit localhost in the browser. Now this would never happen in a real VPS, but because we're using a Docker container, Docker containers do not have an init system. So in other words, when you restart the container, it's not going to automatically start the PHP service in the background, or the MySQL database in the background, or the Nginx web server in the background. So let me show you what we would need to do. We would need to, click on your name to open up your terminal. You can use this terminal, or I like to click, open an external terminal. Okay, and what you would need to do is just manually start up. So go into the etc/etc init.d and then, start MySQL. And then do the same thing with the PHP service. So /etc/init.d/php 8.1-fpm start. And then finally start up Nginx, right? So /etc init.d Nginx start. Cool. Now, with all of those running in the background, now if you refresh localhost, it works. Cool. However, every single time you stop and start your Ubuntu container, you probably don't want to have to manually run all of those commands because that's difficult to remember and it's just annoying. Now, again, you would not need to do this on a real VPS, but in Docker, what I would do to get around this is probably just create a startup script file, and then I could just run one single command and it would run all of these for me. So let me show you what I have in mind. I would create a new file. So touch is how you can create a new empty file. I would create a new file just on the root of the system. So / and I'll name it like our startup. And then I would nano into that file. So nano / our startup. And in this file, we're just going to create a bash script. So at the top, say #bin/bash. And now we're free to just spell out commands. So I would literally just spell out, /etc init.d, MySQL start. And then I'm basically just spelling out the commands that we would run, only this script will do it for us. So PHP 8.1-fpm start /etc init.d /nginx start. Cool. So let me go ahead and exit this file. Control X. Yes, I want to save it. So Y, I want that file name, enter. Now we do need to make that file executable. So we just say chmod u+x to make it executable for this user, and then, /our startup. Cool. Now let's go ahead and stop this container. So in Docker, if you go back to your container screen, just click the stop icon. That should just take maybe like 5 to 10 seconds to stop the container. Okay, and now with it stopped, obviously you can't actually visit it, but if we go and start it up again, yes, it's started, but it's still not going to work. But now the idea is we just have that one command that we can run. So if you just click on your name, go to terminal, literally all you would have to do is just, say /our startup, press enter, and that's it. So we just called that startup script file. It's going to run all of those commands for us. And now if you refresh, oops, so it wasn't working for me. I'm wondering if I ran the command too quickly after just booting up the container. So maybe if I just run it one more time now. So /our startup. And now if I go refresh, cool. So yeah, maybe just don't run that command, 1 second after your container boots up. Maybe you got to wait, 5 to 10 seconds. Let me practice that one more time. So if I actually go in and stop my container and then start it up again. And now let me actually wait, like maybe 10 to 15 seconds. Let me click in, go to the terminal, and then wait another like 5 to 10 seconds. And then now if I say like /our startup. Cool, let me go refresh. Cool. That's still a bit inconvenient. Don't worry, you would not need to do that on a real VPS. When we get to the real VPS lesson, everything can be set up so it just starts automatically whenever the server reboots. But for this Docker container, this is a solution that I think works okay. Anyways, at this point, let's go ahead and set up an automated way to run our queue worker and also our schedule worker. Remember, we set things up so that if you create a new blog post, that job to send out the email gets added to the queue, and that only runs if you actually have the queue worker up and running. So let me give you an example, right? Like if I log in and I create a post, first Brad post, lorem ipsum. So that just created a queued job. However, if I look in Mailtrap and refresh, it didn't actually get sent. Now, in order to send that, technically you could go into your terminal, and go into, cd/var www our app, and technically, you could say php artisan q:work, and that is going to see that queued up job. It's going to process it, and there we see it in Mailtrap. So that works, but here's the thing. You don't want to have to let me press Control C. You don't want to have to manually run this every time your server boots up. You want this to just be automatically called. And the same holds true for PHP Artisan. Remember, schedule:work. Or not schedule work, it's schedule:run. But the idea is you don't want to have to manually run these things. You just want them running automatically. So to make that happen, we're going to install something called cron. So just say apt install cron. Go ahead and press enter. Cool. Let me actually open up my external terminal. Cool, just so it's easier for you to read. And now that we have cron installed, we just want to add a job, and we can specify when or how often it should be called. So do this with me. Say cron tab, and then a space -e to edit our cron jobs. Go ahead and press enter. Okay, now in this file, just use the arrows on your keyboard to go down to the very bottom of this file. And here's what we're going to do. I want you to have 5 asterisks that are space separated. So just asterisk, space, asterisk, have 5 asterisks. We're not going to get into the syntax details of how this works, but this is essentially saying every minute, right? Like every 60 seconds, every minute run some sort of command. You can see the syntax is like the order is minute, hour, day of month, day of week. But anyways, after our 5 asterisks with spaces in between, then we just give it the command that we would want to run. So we would just want to run our PHP artisan command, but here's the thing. We want to spell it out in a way using absolute paths. So like instead of just saying PHP for the PHP command or application, we would actually say /usr/bin/php, and then a space. Like normally, you say PHP artisan. So that takes care of the PHP. Now, instead of artisan, let's provide an absolute path to the artisan file that lives in our, Laravel source code folder. So that would be /var/www/our app/artisan. Cool. And now we can just run the actual command. So like q:work. And then we don't just want to let it run forever. Let's just let it run for exactly 1 minute. And then every minute after that minute passes, this is just going to call it again. This way, if there's an error and for some reason the task errors out, it's not just crashed forever because it was only being called once and told to run forever. We're recalling it every minute and it's going to run for 1 minute. So this actually works really nicely. So we're just going to say max time equals 60 for 60 seconds or a minute. Below that, let's set up a cron job so that our schedule task or our schedule command will automatically run. So again, just 5 asterisks. We're just going to run it every minute. And then the same thing. So /usr/bin/php/var www our app/artisan, and then schedule::run. This one's a bit different. We don't need to include max time equals 60 because this doesn't just run in the background forever. Instead, it just runs, it does its job, and then it's done. So that makes perfect sense, right? We're just going to recall it once every minute to see if there's any scheduled jobs that need to be called. Cool. So with these lines in place, you can go ahead and press X to save that, hit Y for yes, hit enter. Okay, and now we just need to tell the cron job service to actually run in the background. So believe it or not, we would just say /etc/init.d/cron start. Cool. Now to test this out, here's what we can do. Let's just go create a new blog post. So here we can see just a couple of seconds ago, I already got the, remember we set up a schedule, so this is going to send every minute. But if I go create a new post, and say cron test, lorem ipsum, go ahead and save that. Check my mail trap, click refresh. Awesome. Congrats on the new post. It's titled cron test. And there's another recap. Cool, so that's up and running. Now, again, on a real Linux box, on a real VPS, cron job is just gonna run automatically every time you reboot the computer, so you'd be good to go. In our case, because Docker, again, doesn't have an init system, here's what I would do. I would just go into my startup file, right? So nano/our startup, and down at the bottom, I would just, say /etc init.d/cron start. Go ahead and press Control X, save it, yes, enter, cool. For our final detail in this lesson, I want to use Redis. So Redis is a lightning fast cache system, or you can get creative and almost just use it as a database replacement. But in our case, we're going to use Redis instead of the file system for, Laravel cache. Remember on our homepage, if you're not logged in, remember we were caching this value. So we can improve the performance of our site by using Redis for cache. Also, you can use Redis to store the queued up jobs that need to be ran. Redis is just a great solution that can really improve the speed of your website. So here's what I would do. In our container, say apt install, and the package is redis-server. Go ahead and press enter. When it asks you, just press Y for yes. Cool. Let me clear that so we're back up at the top of the screen. Before we can go into our Laravel env file and tell it to use Redis, we do need to install a package using Composer, a PHP package. So let's make sure we're in our Laravel folder. So cd/var/www/our app. If you run ls, you'll know you're in the right folder if you see all your Laravel source code files. Now just do this with me. Let's say Composer require predis/predis. So this is just a PHP package that makes it really easy to get Redis up and running. Let's go ahead and press enter. I can't imagine it takes more than about 10 to 12 seconds. Cool. They run clear, so we're back up at the top. Okay, and now we're ready to go into our env file. So just nano.env. And here's what we're going to do. Use your arrow keys to go down to where you see cache driver. Instead of file, I'm going to put this to Redis. Also, for queue connection, instead of storing the queued up jobs in the database, the MySQL database, let's store them in Redis to improve performance, and reduce the load on our MySQL database, reduce the bottleneck. Okay, and then I do want you to create, so just push enter and create a brand new property, and let's call it Redis_client and set that to equal PR, just P Redis. Just like this. We can go ahead and press X to save this file, Y for yes, go ahead and press enter. And now if you refresh your logged out homepage, whoops, you can see I'm getting a 500 error. This is because I didn't start the Redis service in the background. So you might have guessed it. Here's what we would do. Just /etc init.d/redis start. Whoops, maybe it's not just named Redis, maybe it's Redis server. So /etc init.d redis server start. Cool, so now that's up and running. The Redis server should be available. So if we refresh the home page, beautiful. So we can see the cache is working. Let's test our queue system. So let me log in. Let me create a post. Testing queue system with Redis, lorem ipsum. Click save. If I check mail trap, you might need to wait an actual full minute because you might need to wait until cron job calls the queue task one more time using the new system, right? So if you caught this at an inconvenient time, it's probably still using the database connection. So you have to wait maybe like a full 59 seconds until it gets called again using the new Redis setup. But after I waited about 50 seconds, you can see congrats on the new post, testing queue system with Redis. Awesome. And then just for one quick detail, you probably want to add that command of starting the Redis server into your startup file. So I would just say nano/our startup. Down at the bottom, just start it up, right? So /etc init.d/redis-server start. Let's save that with Control X, Y, enter. Cool. Let's test this out. So to close out the lesson, let me close or stop this container. Okay, so now I cannot view it in the browser. However, if we start up the container and go into it, click terminal, I'll wait maybe just like another 5 seconds or so. But then if I go ahead and say /our startup, so that will run all of our commands. And now if I refresh, beautiful. So we're up and running. Now, this was just practice to get you comfortable doing things from the command line. We didn't actually learn how to set up like a firewall or, set up HTTPS on our domain or do things in a really secure way, nor did we learn how to just have things start up automatically without us creating a startup file. So the idea is, yes, there's going to be little differences in the upcoming videos, but hopefully this was a bit of good practice for you to set up a fresh Ubuntu machine that hosts a Laravel application. Now, in our very next lesson, we're going to do this again, but we're going to do it for real. I'm going to actually set up a VPS using Linode. I'm not officially endorsing Linode in this course. You're not going to find any sort of sign up or affiliate link, but I do want to show you on camera how I would set this up for real using a real VPS. Anyways, let's keep our momentum rolling, and I will see you in the next lesson.